No better time than the present. Doug, how you doing? Thank you for coming.
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here.
What a treat.
Going to be discussing a few things. Going to
great.
get into it off the top, and then we'll play that category game that I do every
Yeah.
time. I want to talk to you about the wave theory of comedy. I'm not sure if you heard about this before. I'm not sure even if I have heard of this, but we'll talk about what that means.
Okay.
Also, food ideas, grub in any sort of culinary-related media, kitchen accessories, all sorts of stuff, because you are definitely a go-to brain when it comes to the food.
That's nice.
Final is going to be maybe some Southern lessons or stories you have.
Okay.
If you could even consider North Carolina Southern. That's Southern,
That's a
right?
good question. Yeah.
Chapel Hill, I mean.
Chapel Hill's, yeah. We'll see.
Certainly partial credits. And then I'm sure we'll round about and talk about anything else that comes up as well.
Cool. Sounds good. Percussive thunder before cognitive plunder. Hope I don't blunder or even just under perform.
Oh, fantastic. Like we practiced that. Like we had practiced
Almost
that.
like that.
Well, Doug, again, thanks for coming on 58th episode of the Neverending Becoming. Hello to everyone at home, whoever you may be. Happy to have you on the podcast, too. It says it's your first podcast.
It's
so
my first
breaking
podcast.
some
Like I
ground.
said, not the first one I've listened to, but I have listened to this one quite a bit. But yeah, first one where I'm being talked with.
Perfect. There's a funny thing where if you listen to enough podcasts, you basically have been on a podcast. It's one of those art forms.
Well, you can imagine what you might say in response and all that. Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. Well, that's like the joy. It kind of feels like you're in on it, right? Like you're part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You're in the ear.
Yeah.
Let's get to that wave theory of comedy. Have you ever heard
Sure.
this expression at all?
Maybe. I mean, I did in college. I was kind of treating comedy in a serious way during my thesis. And so perhaps I ran upon it there, but I don't know what it means.
I'll get to it. And then you brought up your college. You actually went to probably the most prominent college for comedy in the last 50 years, if ever, right?
That's, I think, fair to say. Yeah.
You went to Harvard, and Harvard has this crazy reputation for staffing all writers' rooms, East Coast, West Coast, wherever.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple times on this podcast one of the more famous comedy minds to come out of Harvard, who was Conan.
Coco, yeah.
Who sometimes, as other alumni of the institution don't always reveal it very forthrightfully, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they're so legit that you don't have to reveal it immediately. Like you obviously, people have enough to stand on. They don't have to just talk about their degree or whatever. But it's kind of crazy not to talk about it because Harvard has owned, I guess, the comedy mind, right? In a lot of ways, it's maybe some blue collar, some rural middle America jokes, but then a lot of it's like highbrow or at least educated East class mindset through Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the stat that comes to mind, I think, is something like 30 plus writers of The Simpsons have come from there.
You have stats on it. I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
That's the only one I have. Stats and comedy don't mix very well, but it is a prominent place for that. In large part because of the humor magazine there and the kind of culture around it. I think most of these folks came through that magazine, but there are some others who didn't. There was the last guest on what's it called? The NPR
Fresh Air. Wait, don't tell me.
Wait, don't tell me. Okay. Thank you. One of the last on the last Wait, don't tell me, they had a guest who is I think a writer on Seth Meyers who was a couple years below me.
Oh, really?
So Karen Shee, if you want to listen to that episode, she's funny and
nice.
Yeah.
So still doing strong.
Still doing
still performing.
some
still
at least.
doing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't even start with Conan. You mentioned before we started the Lampoon and other institutions that were important there, right? So
Yeah.
pretty amazing. This wave theory of comedy
Yeah.
thing, I'm pretty sure I heard it come out of Mike Myers' mouth. I since looked this up last night, could not find a word about it. So I might be a rambling madman. But I believe he was talking about how he wrote Wayne's World, how he wrote some of the Austin Powers movies, with the idea being that when you're writing sequences of jokes, you sort of want the jokes to grow in intensity or hilarity. So you have like a baby joke to warm you up, medium-sized joke, and then like a big laugh.
Yeah.
And then after that, maybe you have like another joke. It really can't beat the high point of the comedy, but it's still a good one. And then you kind of scale back down again. You end up forming this rhythm. You can't be laughing intensely out loud for, an hour and a half fully. You kind of have to give people a minute.
Yeah.
Like your body's chemistry probably needs a moment for the gradient to be fulfilled, so you can have the same emotional and physiological reaction.
Need to catch up on the oxygen. Yeah.
I'm bringing it to a whole microbial level. I don't think Mr. Myers was interested in at the time.
I did look into in college at one point in my psychology class, the evolutionary biology of humor. It was a bad paper because I kind of conflated humor with laughing, but the evolutionary biology of laughing, the theories about that are pretty interesting.
Is it I feel like it's to signal to one another that everything's okay, like when you're in a hunt or something, like to have everyone feel at ease in a moment. Like it's sort of forcing people to chill out, right?
Well,
like laughing. Or...
So the one of the theories that I remember is it kind of accompanied play, and this is the reason why we associate it with mirth, I guess, is that when apes are playing, they're running around, they're like a horse play, or chimp play, if you will, and they're running around, and they're when they're hitting the ground, they have to tense up their core, essentially, like hold their breath, and so it's like a ha, that's the sound that comes out.
This is way deeper. This is way before the hunt began.
So play and laughter and activity kind of corresponds. I mean, you hear it maybe when dogs are playing, right? They're like breathing in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's a theory.
Fascinating.
It wasn't a great paper, so I can't tell you if it's a legitimate one.
Hey, we're still advancing the theory. We're still working on it. Who knows? You can go back to that forever.
Yeah.
This wave theory thing, though, I do find very interesting.
Yeah. What it reminds me of, I suppose, is at least the build, right? Like that makes sense to me in terms of, I mentioned to you that as a, how do I pick a word? A practitioner of comedy, I suppose. The most, that's so...
The way you said it was hilarious. I feel like that's the more important element.
Anyway, I have...
Connoisseur is the word I would have chosen.
Yeah.
Comedy connoisseur.
Well, the comedy that I've done has been improv. It was in college primarily. And I, in improv, there's long-form improv. There's two kind of types of improv. But in long-form improv, there's a game, which is kind of the joke, the weird thing, the funny thing within a scene that you're intending to elevate, to magnify over the course of the scene in beats, like and
the magnifying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To be building up to something.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I mean, where are you going to go if you start with the biggest joke, right? Like
the phone was in his ass the whole time. I don't know how Second City shows on. I'm assuming it's something like that.
I think that's the third rule of comedy. Yeah,
you have to use an object everyone is in love with or familiar with, a phone,
yeah.
and then an orifice. I think
any orifice is fine.
Okay, I'm just checking. That clears. I'm glad.
Yeah,
but I'm curious too if you could use some of the same practices in improv creation or sketch creation that you could in a movie or something that's more serial.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's what Second City, writes their kind of reviews through improv, through kind of playing with it and seeing where it goes. And I think the same thing applies. That's the reason why you see a lot of former improvisers in written comedy is because there's a similar kind of, formula, I guess, right? About having to trying to hit the same thread of the joke, but in escalation.
It's fulfilling when you know it's coming. You kind of want people to wait for that punchline a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost trick the psychology in that way.
Yeah, but the way it gets hit, I suppose, is the place where there's room for surprise, right? Like there's different ways to play a game. I do find it really fun though when I know what's coming. Although I probably am not laughing maybe as hard at that. I'm like, it's satisfying,
That might be one of the smaller descending jokes, or that maybe isn't that final crest.
But the the descending is interesting.
The descending's weird. That's the odd part about it.
I mean, I think there's like a descending of energy makes sense to me. I don't know if continuing on the same thread with a less intense joke makes makes that much sense. But I would venture to guess that if Mike Myers is talking about a movie, he's talking about this, like, if you could chart it on a timeline across the movie, right? It like a waveform with the energy of the laughter or whatever. Or maybe it doesn't have to be a waveform. Maybe it's just like a...
It could be viewed as a waveform literally if you're capturing audience laughter. If you're looking at like the peaks, you could just have it be quantitative at that point, looking at decibel ratings, how loud everyone gets.
I bet they do that.
What about in theaters? You can't even hear the good jokes after the best joke sometimes, or like, you know, the series of jokes because everyone's laughing so hard. You almost like want to keep that joke in the holster, right?
Well, there's certainly, I mean, like in the micro moment where I suppose if you're performing, you definitely want to, if it's a live performance in a play or an improv, you want to wait for the laughter to die down.
Yeah.
That time where it's laughing is not part of the reality of the scene, right? Like
right.
It's like the audience is still processing and enjoying, and then you're waiting for, you want to have the best bang for your buck on that next joke.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but I suppose
you're not in control of that.
Hard to do. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard in general to. But yeah, right. You're in control. Well, you're in control at when you're making it and you're testing it, I suppose, which a lot of movies do. Right? They run it in a theater, and
I wonder how often the joke writing occurs where they're almost maybe oscillating even between different types of humor. Like I mentioned the highbrow, lowbrow, just to put it in easy categories for types of humor earlier. If you could do like the highbrow joke and then switch to the lowbrow joke in case the highbrow didn't catch the lowbrow, and you can just like kind of hit each audience like back and forth with each joke.
Yeah, I'm curious how that works for sort of the big movies out there, the big comedies. I don't know.
Well, those don't exist, so
yeah, not right now. Anyway. But I am curious though if testing is a big part of movie making. I don't know if it is, but how important it is. During COVID, I suppose people weren't testing movies in the same way. So I wonder if the movies aren't as funny.
It's possible.
Or as good broadly, right?
It's totally possible.
That'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I can't imagine they were getting the same data doing it over Skype.
But maybe there's value in that, right? Not testing something and just like having that be an original product coming out of, I don't know.
To me, that is the dream. Something that is more singularly focused. That's someone's individual vision. I like things like that.
Yeah, but that's not really like how movies are made.
It's not.
Unfortunately.
They're kind of by committee.
Most movies, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I do find myself having a soft spot for the people that are like writer-directors, starring. I mentioned Mike Myers. He starred in.
I think I didn't fully realize that. Although I guess people forget that, well, I don't think Austin Powers falls into this category, but Wayne's World falls into the category of movies that once were SNL sketches, which is taken as a whole, not like a stellar category of films.
No, it's not. I mean, Wayne's World is the notable exception, right, in terms of success.
Blues Brothers, I think, as well.
Sure.
That's the other one I'll give, probably. I can't think of.
I've enjoyed a lot of the SNL movies I've seen, like Coneheads. There's other ones that, even Pat back in the day, that was like very ahead of its time, at least in terms of gender fluidity.
Yeah.
Issues.
Oh, have you? There's a TV show written and produced. It's about to have its second season come out on Showtime, I think, and it's written by Abby McEnany, who's a Chicago improviser. And in the show, she confronts what's her face, who played Pat, Julia Sweeney.
Yeah.
About that character. Abby McEnany's character is a queer woman who is kind of on the butch end of the spectrum, who's essentially feeling like that character was making fun of her growing up, and so she confronts and befriends after Julia Sweeney.
Fascinating.
Who I suppose still hangs out around Chicago. I don't know. Yeah.
Fascinating. I would love, I've seen this movie a long time ago. I can't even think of what it was. I just remember the whole joke. I remember the whole time is, is it a man or a woman? Like that's so it's like kind of simple shit, obviously. But on some wavelength, you have to give it credit or any studio credit that like green lights a movie for these questions to even be asked, because a lot of times they were totally boxed out of any opportunity for like a mainstream audience, and it doesn't get any more mainstream at least nowadays than SNL, right? You said Austin Powers wasn't based on SNL, but
is that right? Oh no, it's based on Lorne Michaels.
Dr. Evil is basically Lorne Michaels, so in a way, SNL is directly connected to that franchise as well.
That's true, and I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure Lorne Michaels played a role in getting that movie made somehow, right? Even if it was just Mike Myers being a big star, right?
I mean, Will Ferrell was in there, like when he was still like
that's right,
new, sort of on SNL. Actually, I think I heard Dana Carvey originally had that Lorne Michaels impression, and Mike Myers maybe copped it, maybe appropriated it in a certain way. So there's a lot of SNL elements involved. I'll have to keep looking for this wave theory comedy thing. I don't know. I just look for it as you're watching movies, maybe at home. Anyone who's checking it out, see if you can make sense of this. I even typed in like Mike Myers wave theory. Nothing came up. So I don't know if I just had a fever dream or this is just I'm just combining two different theories and somehow making it into one. But
I like it. I think it makes sense. Even if it's complete and utter horseshit.
It feels good. That's what matters. It feels good. I just heard Mike Myers actually was going to be in a movie or a series for Netflix. He's playing 7 characters. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, I don't think that's going to go well. I don't know. I don't like those so much. I'm thinking, I suppose, of what, like Tyler Perry, Eddie Murphy in
Nutty Professor.
Yeah. I think it's a little silly.
It's very silly.
I mean, it's very silly. But I think I also think Mike Myers is a little past his prime. I hope it goes well for him. I hope Mike. I hope it goes well for you. You're probably just tuning in right now, and but I mean, well, I think there's probably some sort of a show that I've enjoyed with that being a theme, but
it goes back a long way. Some of the Kubrick movies had Peter Sellers doing multiple characters. In Dr. Strangelove, he's the president.
Oh,
and he's Dr. Strangelove.
Right, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
You mentioned Peter Sellers. I watched the original Pink Panther for the first time recently, in large part because I've been listening to a lot of Conan. This is a theme of this podcast that on his kind of maiden or farewell voyage, let's call it.
Yeah.
And he's inspired. He says by Peter Sellers quite a bit. And so I was kind of curious to revisit it. I think I watched it as a kid and probably didn't find it that funny.
I've never seen it. Does it hold up?
I don't know. It was kind of confusing and slow, but I feel like movies back then maybe were just generally slower.
Yeah.
And it didn't have enough, dopamine prompts in it for me, probably.
She got that wave going.
Yeah.
Is there like an animatronic Pink Panther? What is the Pink Panther back then? Is it animated?
No, there's no
Pink Panther.
There's no Pink. Well, there is kind of in the credits like a cartoon Pink Panther, but I think it refers to a gemstone or something in that movie. But I was hoping for an actual Pink Panther, and then it never came. So I'm a little confused about like why. Unless I fell asleep and missed the one scene with the Pink Panther, but
I don't know. I'm trying to make sense of it in my mind right now too.
I was hoping for a panther. I got gypped.
As a young person, all you've seen is the cartoon Pink Panther, so that's what you'd be looking for the whole time.
Yeah. Anyway, but
Peter Sellers, you don't need a Pink Panther. I mean, he could just do like ventriloquism, talking out the side of his mouth.
He was fun. He was definitely understated in that performance. It was like silliness, but without calling attention to it.
Where is he from, Mr. Bean to Mr. Magoo? Like in terms of is he like a quiet character? Does he not speak? Like does funny physical comedy?
He's an inspector, a police, a detective, I suppose. And so he's I would say that he's doing like the laughs are more physical comedy, which I was kind of surprised by. But he's not saying goofy things. He's acting as a serious detective, but then like just incompetently. That's the fun.
Art imitates life. Life then imitates art. Now, police being incompetent. But yeah, I'm trying to think of the fact that 7 different characters for Mike Myers. Peter Sellers maybe started this trend. I don't know. I might even go back before then. I'm sure it came out of necessity at some point. Like you just needed more people that could do that. Obviously, once costume makeup came in. Well, and it's kind of a funny thing, though.
Well, I think it comes to in this kind of a situation where it's multiple people playing someone in the same movie. It's people who are known for wacky characters and like celebrated for it. there's another Netflix series called The Characters, I think it is, where they have each individual episode is, I don't know, a series of 6, let's say, sketches with the same person playing a different person in each, same actor, same comedian playing a different character in each sketch. And I really liked that.
I love it. It's like
Tim Robinson's episode in that is by far my favorite. And that's essentially what I think You Should Leave is.
I might be Paul Downs. On that series, but Lauren Lapkus does a decent job starting off. I mean, they're all very good. Yeah. I remember being so excited about each of those different. They're like character portfolios.
Yeah,
they're sort of showing off some of their skills.
But I think I prefer that because there's something contrived about, you know that there's some editing going on. It makes you think about the production process where it's individual shots happening and then being stitched together, essentially. That's what kind of does it for me, I think, with the feature film or whatever it is. So,
oh, you think about the production element or how it's actually created too?
It's kind of distracting to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everyone's so savvy with media now. You have to decide pretty intensely whether you want to meet everyone's expectation or work hard to go against it.
Yeah. Can you think of the last thing that Mike Myers did?
I think he did like a SNL anniversary show. I think he dusted off his Wayne's World character for that, maybe the 45th anniversary or something of the sort.
Right. Okay.
He was also in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, was he?
A couple years ago.
Oh,
yeah, he was a music producer.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
Yeah, and he played like a cool, like a funny character.
You know what I haven't seen from Mike Myers is a serious role, and I really like comedians who are good actors.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just like...
Who started that?
Who started that? That's a good question.
I'm going to speculate as to how these things happen throughout time. Or what's one that comes to mind? We mentioned Eddie Murphy for different characters in Nutty Professor.
The one that comes to mind first is Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. I was going to say the same thing.
His most recent thing that I've seen is Kidding, which is a Showtime show, but it's essentially a Mr. Rogers character, but looking behind the curtain of what that kind of playing that role to millions of people looks like.
I've seen a few episodes. It was amazing.
Crazy dark.
Dark.
I don't think it's a comedy. It's kind of like it's like marketed maybe as one, but it's so dark. It's one of the darkest things I've ever seen.
It's a lot.
But he's talented. Like a Man on the Moon, like that whole, and the documentary about that.
People say Eternal Sunshine a lot. Truman Show was a big turn for him. The comical ones of the dramatic series would be 23, the movie 23, with his numerology. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that one where he just writes 23, 11
Is it
plus.
a horror film?
I never saw it. I just remember it being a joke at the time. I think it was one of those that came and went.
Yeah, I remember vaguely, but I don't.
Now that I describe it like that, you're like, oh yeah.
But I mean, Will Ferrell has had,
he's done some.
Stranger Than Fiction I thought he was quite good. Well, now I don't know who else comes to mind, but. I really appreciate those performances.
Well, Eddie Murphy's more 80s. Did he ever get into a serious role? Like, did he kind of help start
Depends
that?
How you categorize Dr. Dolittle. Caring for animals with deep illnesses. It's like Patch Adams for animals, essentially.
Robin Williams.
Yeah, Robin Williams is probably the first.
Your joke brought us to the actual answer. Robin Williams
did
a lot of transcending from medium to medium.
I was just watching Good Will Hunting clips on YouTube. Y'all talk about how YouTube is this magical portal to exactly what you want to watch. And I was watching an interview with Matt Damon on Hot Ones, and then he brings up a scene in Good Will Hunting, so I go on a different YouTube tab to see that while paused in the interview. It was really good. He's it's obviously it's sad that he's gone, but it's like I think he's probably the quintessential and maybe the one of the early folks in that realm.
He must have been. I mean, at least for our generation, everything I'm sure everything has happened before, will happen again, right? Yeah. A lot of things are just remixes.
Wave theory,
Neverending becoming. Push the brand. But yeah, no, it's interesting to think about the people that have made the jump now, especially since they don't want to make movies anymore. Like there's not as much financing for them. A lot of times, the studios just go with a series or a proven leading person, a la Adam Sandler. I guess we could count Adam Sandler doing Punch Drunk Love. He's another,
Adam Sandler's a good.
Who's crossed.
One. I didn't see. What was the more recent one with the diamonds? You know what I'm talking about?
The Netflix theft heist movie? And I don't know. I'm sorry. Uncut Jewels.
Uncut Jewels.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that, but I heard he was excellent in that.
Even then, I feel like when you brought that up, I couldn't even think about him in a serious and funny movie at the same time. Like I was just thinking like bad
They're
Netflix
very different.
Adam Sandler, but he's got the goods.
But he's got the gems. And Jim Carrey are particularly surprising to me because I think of their comedies as so dumb. Like their style of, and I think Mike Myers kind of fits into that pool as well. And like that style of comedy is so dumb. It's not like highfalutin stuff. And then they do highfalutin stuff in a drama, and it's really impressive. It's like, where'd that come from? And that's
Oh, I got one more. Steve Carell, funny, dramatic.
Oh yeah,
so everyone does this. So this is just the move, right?
Now anyway, it would be interesting to think about like what it meant, or like when it really became a thing. I mean, we only have so much, history to reflect on in terms of like, broad-based like screen culture.
70, 80 years.
Right. But I do wonder if it really was only starting in the 90s or whatever. I mean, SNL is kind of like, as far as comedy on the screen goes, is kind of it's probably the most important kind of single institution.
I agree with that. I still have mad respect for SNL. People love to shit talk it, but they've been shit talking it for like my whole life. I mean, 20 years. Like they always.
I like it. I don't know.
I think it's SNL, whether you think it's good or bad, is just more of an age test than anything. Like, how old are you, basically? Like, if you're willing to accept new ideas in your brain or not. Like, the question, do you still listen to new music, is almost the same as, do you like the current cast on SNL?
Oh, interesting.
Right? Like, if you've turned 30 years old and shut your mind off to media.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that, but I think it's also like, I think pop music in particular, it probably fits that metaphor, that comparison a little bit better, because it's cool to hate pop music, right? It's kind of cool to hate SNL if you're a comedy person, I feel like.
Right.
Because it's like, obviously.
It's a form of virtue signing, in essence.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, obviously.
Or intelligence signaling as a virtue.
I think so, right? Like, I only like the good stuff, Obviously, not every sketch is going to be good. Like, it's produced in a week. I mean, that being said, like, I know people really like South Park, and that has a similar kind of production schedule, I think. But I don't know. Yeah, it's impressive to me. It's, you get a few gems. It's a good.
Some cut.
I think it's an important institution, regardless of
some uncut.
Yeah.
I just heard South Park, they're getting $900 million to go to season 30 and produce 4 movies for Paramount Plus. Did you hear about that?
I did not. The movies? 4 movies?
4 movies.
We need 4 new South Park movies?
They're going to be South Park adjacent or set in the world of South Park. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's we'll have to see how Trey Parker and Matt Stone, how creative they are at this point in their career.
Are they? I mean, they're still involved, we think?
I think Trey Parker is for sure. I think they both are. I know there's a long history of them rotating people in.
Was this a show you watched growing up?
When I was like 10 years old. Yeah. Like when I was young enough to actually be a child when South Park came out, and for it to actually still be cool. Like a lot of I'm saying this, whatever. I had no place in this. I just was born, and it happened to be that like I was young enough to still be watching cartoons that actually were cool. Like when Family Guy and South Park came out, it was legitimately edgy for like an 8 or 9-year-old to be watching these things, because you shouldn't have been watching these things.
Well, and it was also, as far as I'm aware, I've seen probably 5 South Park episodes in my life. And,
really?
And because I've fallen. Well, there's a divide, I think, in people our age of if you grew up with cable or not. Yeah. And South Park was a cable show, and so I only watched it. I've watched a couple episodes in the last 10 years, but then maybe when I was at a friend's house or something. And so I think I'm correct in saying that there's kind of two. There's a BC and AD in South Park of like
really
silly, stupid, offensive stuff, and then like satire, move towards satire in the second half of its run. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I know it's always been somewhat topical. I remember. Do you remember when there was a young boy, I think from Cuba in Florida? This is like the late 90s, and the U.S. government went in And then there's this famous photo of the boy being held by someone in a closet in like military dudes with like AK-47s, basically, just to extradite this young boy. For some reason, it became
I remember.
international.
I don't remember his name.
I remember, them doing back then. Them doing an episode 4 days later where it's like the Easter Bunny. Like the Easter Bunny goes in the house and somehow it's with AK-47s or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they've always had that topical flair. I do think they've turned up the satire dial a little bit. That it's more just like. It's the thing that's probably going to feed their storyline more than anything, because they've probably done a lot of character development. What is Stan's family like? What is Kyle's family like? And they probably lean a little bit harder on issues of the modern day. And they'll even change the setting of the town. Like I know Stan's family like moved out of South Park, and now like his dad has a weed farm. That's obviously that's like funny. Relevant, topical, whatever. Integrity Farms. But yeah, I think they've always been into that. Into that. Well, but it's like changed a lot. Every episode, every season's probably a little bit different. I know they've had a lot of SNL writers there. Bill Hader used to be on there, and in the writers' room rather, and in and out. I give you credit for skipping all the South Park. I don't know how you did that. That's amazing for your.
I just never had the access to it.
Yeah. Simpsons, yes.
Simpsons, yes. Simpsons was,
Fox
had 2 episodes every evening after I got home from school at 5 and 6, followed by Seinfeld and Malcolm in the Middle for a number of years.
Would you go all the way through? Would you watch Seinfeld?
I'm not a Seinfeld guy.
Okay, well, it's tough.
This is an interesting place where I think people differ. People whose comedy taste I respect. So Craig, for instance, and maybe you're a Seinfeld guy. I don't know, but Craig.
I'm gonna wait. Continue.
One of your guests in episode, let's call it 27.
29.
Really?
I think so.
Wow.
I animated a string of 29s as a bird flew by the camera. It took me a long time, but you can't even notice it in the film. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that was it.
But we get along on comedy taste a lot, and he's a big Seinfeld guy, and I don't get it. I don't understand why it's funny.
I do like it. I am not repeating it constantly. Some people get real obsessed. My dad is obsessed with Seinfeld, and he actually missed all of it when it was popular. Like he was like working on construction sites at the time, and then he retired and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing. This somehow fits my worldview, whatever."
But Malcolm in the Middle is primo. I think that's an underrated show.
If I had to go Seinfeld or Malcolm in the Middle, I would go hard Seinfeld against Malcolm in the Middle. And maybe this is the divide we're drawing here. We're trying to.
That's it. The 5:30 versus 6:30 Fox divide in Central Time Zone. Yeah.
You look at basically it ends up being an anthropological study, like when people ate dinner. Basically, it's when dinner ended up being that night,
right.
How long it took you to get home from school, or whether you played at a park or not. This Curb Your Enthusiasm, this has to be part of the calculation at this point. I'm sure that's the follow-up question. Do you like Seinfeld? Well, do you like Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah, right. I think I like Curb more than I like Seinfeld, but I also find like it's a show centered around a dick. And I don't really vibe with that so much. And I also think Jerry Seinfeld himself is a dick.
He is a dick.
Like, and unapologetically so, because he can be, I suppose. But I don't get why he continues to be rewarded for his bad behavior.
What comes to mind for his dickishness? He obviously was sort of leading the charge against, I guess, PC culture on college campuses a couple years ago.
I think that's reasonable for a comedian,
right?
But I think I've seen like interactions with him. He seems just like not a very personable person.
Yeah. Actually, there's a famous thing of him like brushing Kesha off.
Oh, yeah.
Right, at a red carpet, like being
she asks for a hug and he's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is something I haven't talked about with friends, but that in the 90s, I think while he was on Seinfeld, megastar, he was dating like a 17 or 18-year-old. Which is weird for a 40-year-old or whatever, however old he was.
Don't remember seeing the storyline for that one in the show. He left that one off.
Yeah. So, but Curb, I appreciate a little bit more. I think Larry David is like curmudgeonly in a I don't know, in a old man kind of way.
Whole different structure. Yeah, they're only associated because they were like writing partners, and they do, I think, some similar elements with the A story meeting the B story, twisting and sort of meeting at the end.
I do like the Curb Your Enthusiasm family of memes, however, where some things, kind of disappointing happens to the main character of the video clip, and then they play the da 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 da.
Yeah, the musical cue. That's everything.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's great. I do have a story about Seinfeld, actually. I knew someone that went to work in New York City for a nanny agency that Jerry Seinfeld got services from.
Oh, wow.
And they sent a young male to work with his children or to be a nanny for his children. And I heard that he refused to have a male nanny. He was being gendered. He's taking jobs away from young men. First off. Let's just say that. He's taking jobs away from young men. But he, that you hear something like that's like, yeah, that's Jerry Seinfeld. That's kind of his brand, similar to the brushing off of the Kesha thing. He sort of has become the curmudgeon comedy connoisseur.
Yeah, I actually have really strong opinions about gendered jobs with babysitting in particular, because
really?
I thought I would have been a great babysitter, but I never got the opportunity because of my gender. I think mostly. And
you said Jerry Seinfeld held you down. So
Jerry Seinfeld
never able
held me down.
You couldn't pursue this career.
It's the reason I went to Harvard. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. It's turning out all right for you. So. It's turning out okay. Who knows? But yeah, this is a small story. I happen to have that personal connection, but comical that he seems to be Jerry through and through. Yeah. He's a big meditator, transcendental meditation. I think he needs another session per day. Maybe he needs to chill out a little bit.
Man, I can't imagine him not being. Man, I wonder when he picked that up.
He's not into admirable stuff. All he loves is like sneakers and cars. Yeah, he's very materialistic.
Oh, I also don't like comedians what's it called? Comedians getting in cars getting coffee.
Are you acting like you really don't know or no?
I don't remember the order. It's coffees in cars getting comedians.
Coffee-laden comedians. Enjoying automobile services.
Comedian-laden cars.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he's a bad interviewer.
Overly produced.
I think it's it's like cheesy.
Too many B shots of coffee.
And
it's
cars. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The pouring coffee. Yeah. Come on.
He should just come out with a show called Comedians.
Mm-hmm.
Although he actually.
I don't need to know what kind of fancy car it is.
Yeah. I'm not. Definitely not attracted to people like where that's like their life's zenith is like spending all their free time and disposable income restoring a car that should never be driven anymore. Yeah. That's like backwards technology. Let's do some food stuff. We hit comedy hard. I'm happy about that fact.
We'll talk about wave theory of food.
We'll talk about the wave theory of food. First comes the appetizer, right? They just set you up, get your palate right. I'm just gonna translate this to everything across my life. We could talk about, and I was so excited. I didn't even ask you the 10 categories. I just went into talking. I think our jam went so well.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to basically talk about when we were going on tour with that, and then I totally skipped the categories.
Well, if you feel like sprinkling them in, surprising me with some, feel free.
Let's do that. I'm going to sprinkle 5 in, so let's get half out of the way.
All right.
And then you can just answer one word. First thing that comes to your mind, second thing that comes to your mind. If you could tie it all back to Seinfeld if possible. First one, pencil or pen?
Pencil or pen? I suppose what comes to mind is in the second grade, I got in trouble. This is a vulnerable story to tell on this podcast, but I was a bit of a performer, and in the bathroom in school, I'm
listening.
You know how you had pencil sharpeners in your little pencil pouch, right? And they had a little container for holding sharpenings, and I thought it would be funny, and it wasn't, unfortunately, but I thought it would be funny to pee in that part of the pencil sharpener and, make that a joke with my friends. This is a bit, I can see in your eyes that you're like, oh, brother, we can't put this episode up.
No, I'm pixelating your face in my mind through the edit, but beyond that, no, it's going great.
No, and so this was probably the most,
heat. You got some heat at school.
I got some heat. I was all over the blogs at Edison. And became known throughout throughout other people. This was told to people who weren't in the bathroom at the time. And my second grade teacher found out, and that was mortifying.
No, time out. I think you skipped the best part of the story. What did you do with the piss in the pencil sharpener?
Well, I don't remember. I did not.
Did you flick it and hold it up against the light and make a joke about lead poisoning?
This might have been the week we were learning how to use pH strips. No,
I didn't know if you were trying to give it to someone so that as they turned it, they just got your urine.
No, it wasn't even a prank. It was just I was subverting expectations, right? You usually expect pencil sharpenings, but no, I don't know. I don't, as a second grade mind, I don't really know, not every joke hits, especially in the second grade, and this one didn't. And, I was just doing it for attention, right? And,
Little did you think almost 25 years later you'd be cashing this anecdote in.
Yeah, but thank goodness, finally came to some fruition here. But but my second grade teacher found out, and that was mortifying. Having the discussion with her of why that could be the case, she thought it was a dangerous move, and I was like, it's not like I was putting it in the sharpening part. I mean, lady, I'm dumb, evidently, but
Doug, come over here quickly. I heard something happened in the bathroom. Were you circumcised before this, or is that something that just happened? Because if we're gonna make this into a brisk, then I need to get someone else in. I need a Moyle in here to legitimize this whole occurrence.
Yeah. It was anyway. So I learned that certain
pen
jokes can wait. Yeah. So pen.
God damn, that's great.
Sorry, that was a bit of a long one.
Hey, any stories you have where you are taking your penis out, where you're urinating into something, where
near a blade,
an authority figure is having to speak with you about what just happened, please bring it to the forefront, okay? I want to bury any leads in this podcast. Second one, we have Robinhood.
Okay, Robinhood. So I've used Robinhood this past year probably. Nice. I think I bought 100 shares of Dogecoin. That was the only time I used Robinhood recently. And then I was like,
my face is going to be worse for Dogecoin than it was for the urine earlier.
I know. And the the pixels will be bigger. And then I think I might still have it, but that's the only thing I've used it for. I realized kind of that, especially in how they were treating the ups and downs with these cryptocurrencies, that they're bad. They're not. They say they're free market people, but they aren't.
Yeah. They're marketing people. Mm-hmm. They're into marketing.
Yeah. I also just I think betting on stocks is the same thing as gambling. I don't buy individual stocks. I think that's as silly as gambling. I mean, if you're gonna gamble, fine, but treat it as such, So
yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I think everyone just focus on the S&P 500, index your way to success. Yeah. The only thing I've been able to tell myself, or justification I feel like I've come across, because again, people are supposed to do worse. When you pick individual securities, it's not only when you buy, you have to decide when to sell. There's tax implications. It's a pain in the ass, right? It's generally not worth your time. You should spend more time earning and then just invest more money, right? The only thing I've been able to come up with, though, is that when you buy individual securities, it does tune your brain to the business landscape in a way that you can't have when you don't have real skin in the game.
That's interesting. It reminds me of...
makes you care.
It reminds me of some marketing I've seen for DraftKings recently. No joke. That betting...
Really?
The idea being that betting makes for a better emotional experience with sports. If you have money on a game, you care more about it, it matters more, and it's more exciting. And we watch sports for emotions, so why not? Right?
It is like a adrenaline amplifier.
It's interesting
for those sort of things.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if you could use it as like an intellectual amplification, because, and again, it works both ways. You could become biased for instance, if you bought a few shares of Tesla, it went up times 10, and then you now are all of a sudden thinking about buying an electric car because you're like, I don't know, this is just so great, you almost get some wires crossed, or you end up having confirmation bias kick in. So I feel like you have to be careful about it. But I would say there's probably some portion of the population where they're either gonna invest in individual securities because it's fun, it feels like they have agency, or they're just not gonna invest. That's what I'm curious about. If there's a 8% of the general population where they either want to be acting like they're Warren Buffett, I'm gonna buy Coca-Cola, I'm going to buy Geico, I'm going to buy McDonald's, and it makes them more excited to put more money in. I feel like that's the only way it would be okay, versus obviously the person who is not wowed enough by indexing. Like if you're just buying a giant basket of long-term holdings, I feel like there could be some people that they're just not going to invest in that situation. Like it's Robinhood or bust. That's what I guess I'm curious about. Like you have to engage that gambling element of your brain. Otherwise someone's just not going to put money aside. Like it just won't even happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think, gosh, if I were to choose, I suppose like, I don't know if I'm thinking about this for the individual or for society, but I think if I were to choose between that person just saving their money, putting it in a high yield savings account, whatever, and putting it on random stocks that they think that they are good for whatever reason, I don't know. I feel like
I can't agree with you there, because I feel like the savings thing is also like a trap. Like saving money is, with the power of inflation over time, your money rots away in a sense.
Okay, then if I'm choosing between them having a higher quality of life, spending more on whatever brings them joy, and investing in McDonald's, if I'm choosing between them paying for more McDonald's meals every week and investing in McDonald's, I'd probably pick the former.
Yeah. No, you have a lot of things right in everything you're saying, honestly. You actually made me think of another investing kind of strategy or like psychological hack I've been thinking about, which is, people have like different diets. Like, oh, I don't eat meat, or I don't eat, carbs, whatever. I'm keto. An investing strategy where you just take whatever it is that you bought that day and you just buy equal proportion of the company holdings. Say you spent $5 at McDonald's, you hop on Robinhood, you got to match that $5 with $5 in McDonald's stock. And it would simultaneously shape your investing and your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe you're just filling up on gas, you keep buying Exxon, and you're like, this is crazy. I keep giving my money to Exxon, and maybe it even changes the way you live. And it allows you to be fully invested literally in everything you're doing, have the highest amount of agency in your decision making.
I'm trying to think about which necessary purchases I would be most aggrieved by. Also, how to deal with money that goes to things that aren't companies. Do you get to choose where that money goes then?
You're talking about it like a small vendor or someone that doesn't have,
or if I'm paying for a ride on the CTA. Right? Like, what do I do with that $225?
You got to find a railroad maintenance company.
Okay.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I know someone whose father works for a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, just doing like railroad maintenance for their railroads.
Okay. I think I mean,
here's the random idea. I was supposed to just be talking about Robinhood. Let's go to the next one here. These are half-baked theories I'm just working on. Thanks for letting me bounce them off you. I have the gift of sight.
The gift of sight. You ever bought a domain name for someone else?
Someone else? No.
Yeah. Well, that would be a gift of sight.
The Grift of Flight.
The Grift of Flight.
Thought you were fucking with me. Now I'm fucking with you.
I think I don't know what grift means. I think a grifter is... I
just used it, of course, to rhyme it. It really means nothing in this. Grifting is like pulling a scam on someone. In flight, I was just talking about airlines. I didn't know if you flew here or you had driven here.
I drove here.
You did drive here. Okay.
Do I think flying is grifting? Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then I have two food ones actually, which can lead us into food. This will segment us nicely. They're quick. Maybe they're not quick. Most underrated fruit.
Oh, wow.
It's the first thing that comes to mind. Don't beat yourself up.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is my favorite fruit, but I think it's underrated because it's underknown.
What is it?
Mangosteen.
This is a mango that I'm not familiar with, or is it?
It's not. It looks like a Pokemon. It looks like an Oddish, I would say.
Cool.
If you can recall, it's like a blueberry with a little tuft on top.
Oh, I
think there's probably an updated Pokemon that looks more like it, but that's the only... I'm only familiar with the 151 or 150.
Give me the number in the Pokedex, okay? Don't make this too complicated. Just
27.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a solid recommendation. Can you eat it raw, or do you have to prepare it?
You can eat it raw. It kind of... I'm going to try to describe it. It's between the size of an egg and a tennis ball.
It's very specific.
A lacrosse ball, maybe. It's got a kind of a thick dark purple rind with cute little like succulent looking green leaves on top, and the inside the flesh is white like a lychee, like
really?
Is white, like opaque-y.
Blueberries are kind of like that, right? They have the paler inside.
Yeah, but there's segments. They're kind of little orange segment type things around some pits, and it tastes like I don't know. It's a tropical fruit. It tastes tropical.
A mangosteen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are they easy to get? Do you have to go to a specialty store?
I mean, I've never seen one here.
Earth or Chicago? No.
On Earth, but I haven't seen one in Chicago, but perhaps some Asian stores. Maybe what's it called? The Filipino grocery store has some.
Seafood City.
Maybe they would have some. That'd be a good bet.
Yeah. I'm gonna check that out. I am. Give me an overrated veggie, and then we'll talk about food, other elements of food that aren't so cut and dry.
Overrated veggie. I mean, I think green bell peppers are trash, but I think that everyone knows that. I think, oh no, I'll stick with that. That's
fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I think there are people who like them. I think they shouldn't. Like, they're always the pepper on pizza. I don't know why.
Got to be a cost
cheap?
thing.
Yeah.
Got to be a cost thing somewhat. I think it gives the illusion you're eating greens.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is like a salad on my pizza. It's like, no, this is a sugared pepper.
It's trash.
Right. Well, damn, it's let's jump around with different food elements here. I'm glad I got some initial takes on produce. I know you've been cooking more vegetarian items recently. I'm sure you've opened up your palate. Your Instagram is beautiful, by the way.
Thanks.
If you ever need an idea, you just got to look at your Instagram and check it out. I guess on that, can I ask you, what's it been like? Because you only post photos of food. How has the capturing of the cooking changed for you over time?
Well, some of it. So I don't.
Because they're two different things: the creation, maybe the enjoyment of the meal, but also kind of capturing the essence.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my formula for like taking a picture of food recently is all lighting. And then also, I mean, the other factor that kind of played in was just what I was taking the picture with. So I upgraded to a phone with a better camera. It's a Pixel 2. It's not a new phone, but it has a good camera. And then if it's in some sunlight, it's a good picture. That's it.
Have you learned any pro tips for other people outside of gear that could help someone take a better food photo?
I do think that, like,
do you put the beans in the background a little bit? Like, you try to put the protein in the foreground. Do you get more likes if
I put what the focus of the meal or the post is in the foreground. I try for that. Odd numbers are prettier than even numbers.
Really?
Yeah.
You have like 3 things on a plate versus 4?
I don't know why. It's really interesting.
I like that.
It's really interesting.
Cool.
And I would say that, like, it's easy to be messy on a plate, and it's easy for that messiness to be kind of, I mean, humans are really good at sensing like disruption and patterns, right? So a little oil splecked that's a good word, on the edge of the plate is very visible regardless of how small it is. Like,
yeah.
So kind of cleaning the edge or tidying things up a little bit, like a grain of rice that's like fallen off.
Yeah, you could wipe the outer lip of the plate.
And it doesn't take that much work to do that, to put it in the sun, and that's it.
Yeah, there you go. I've been wanting to get into more things like that. Anytime you spend cooking, food preparing, it's nice to think of that next level.
Yeah.
You know, like shaping the rice in a small bowl and turning that upside down, or some element that makes it feel.
I do sometimes feel a little silly because, my food will be slightly colder when I'm done with the photo. It doesn't take me long, right? It takes me less than a minute probably to deal with the photo situation if the conditions are right.
No, but it does take a sec. Yeah, it's true.
But it takes a second, and it's like, oh well. I mean, it usually is not that big of a deal, but sometimes yeah.
How do you enjoy like the Instagram presence of different culinary scenes? Do you feel like food media is where it can be, it should be?
When you say different scenes, what are you imagining?
So in my mind, there's got to be the famous, we talked about a little bit in the kitchen, celebrity chefs, Gordon Ramsay, David Chang, I think you brought up. There's got to be like media figures, but then I'm sure there are like Instagram influencers, at least restaurants, that probably their whole creation was based off of an Instagram photo being taken, right? So they're getting flower petals on the plate. They're doing like an amateur Van Gogh drawing with different oils that have been used, right?
Yeah, I think it probably echoes problems in other parts of life where it's like the image is really important. And I think one thing I've done on a couple of posts is like been honest in the caption saying that like it may look pretty here, but like didn't taste very good. Like, I think I screwed up on this one, and I wish I did more of that. Or showing like, I think I made pizza for the first time maybe in a long time, and I screwed up on the first one, and it was misshapen, and I still posted it because it was like, it still tasted good, but it doesn't look good. Like, if you got this at a restaurant, you'd be like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I think that like the amplification of perfection has a negative impact on food, because like imperfect food is really good. Also, so my Instagram handle is a play on it, but Ugly Delicious is a Dave Tang show. And
That's right.
And the point of that generally is that like some of the most delicious foods in the world are ugly. They're stews or whatnot. Brown sludge, but it tastes awesome. And like, I feel like taste is a lot more important than what it looks like.
Absolutely. And I was curious if you found some, I guess, reprieve in media or some sort of way to enjoy what's really there without, I guess, just giving into the visual aesthetic of everything. We have multiple senses, all of which I'm sure are engaged when you're eating, right? And everything is so visual. Anyway, let me check this camera over here.
Yeah.
Mine just went off.
Oh, okay.
We're getting near the end, which means I really need to hustle too with some of these questions I have you. I think we have. It's just, I'm just too excited. I'm just having too good of a time talking to you. We only got through 6 out of 10 of the categories, which is the first. I'm happy about that. I'm gonna ask you. Actually, can you answer me now? Tell me about kitchen accessories. Is there anything that you've picked up that makes your life a lot easier, that you didn't know about, that maybe some people have but they need a better version of? Like, if you eat pizza all the time, obviously just get a good pizza cutter. What are you doing? Right?
Oh,
like,
yeah. Well,
something like that.
Since you brought up pizza cutters, I think those are trash. I think.
Are you a scissor guy? Like, what?
No,
give us some
use
kitchen
a knife.
accessory talk.
I think people talk about investing in things that you use the most. Some people talk about investing things that separate you from the floor, right? Like, you're in your bed a third of your life. Spend money on your bed. If the thing that you're going to use the most in the kitchen, and that's going to give you the most frustration if it's crap, is a knife. So just have one good knife and a way to sharpen it. Like,
so that second part's key. Do you sharpen your own knife, or do you bring it somewhere?
No, my knife isn't fancy. It's like a $30 knife, but I keep it in the case to keep it sharp, and I sharpened it recently. I have used those sharpeners that you pull through, and I think they work for a little bit and then not so well after. So I bought a stone recently for the first time.
Very nice.
$10, you soak it in water for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you just kind of rub the knife on the thing on one side and then the other, and that's it.
There's no space age colander though people could go pick up, or like a whisker to make
I
hot
think
chocolate.
The thing that comes to mind with kind of fancy gadgets and all that is sous vide used to be, I feel like, more popular than it is. Are you familiar with this term? So it's basically cooking something in a water bath, in a vacuum bag, and it's you cook it in at the same low temperature for a long time. It's a good way to like deal with thick meat. Like, if you have a really thick steak, you cook the whole thing through to like exactly what you want, and then you throw it on a pan just to get the sear.
Sure.
And so it's kind of perfect cooking. It's like very control oriented. I bought one from Monoprice. This
really,
some of this maybe has come from there.
Probably.
But they have a kitchen gear section, and I bought one from them. I've used it like twice. It's the things that I've bought that are specialty items are kind of.
Does it have a vacuum sealer? Or do you have to take it to that level, or
no?
It's
It's just
the bag?
a stick. It's just a stick that goes in a water bath, and it's called an immersion circulator, and it just keeps the water going, and there's a heating element and a temperature, a thermometer, and it basically just keeps it at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time.
Interesting.
That's it.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
I'm asked about like the visual element of Instagram and food. Cooking shows are a huge thing. If you go on like if you look and see like what shows are actually airing on different networks, like Fox, like a fourth of their programming is like Gordon Ramsay cooking shows, like Celebrity Chef, Children's Chef, right? Do you feel like like David Chang? He has a couple different Netflix series. Is there more room to go for food?
Probably.
Is there something that hasn't happened in food media that you think should happen?
I mean, I think there's probably things that are, I think we could probably broaden horizons a little bit more. I mean, thinking
say something about it being an hour or.
We don't have. Can we stop soon? I really have to go to the bathroom. Oh shoot, I do. No, Anthony Bourdain, for instance, with Parts Unknown, I think is like, we don't have anything like that anymore.
Right.
That kind of combines politics and food and culture in that kind of a holistic way. I think that's really valuable. I also think that like going into places that we haven't been before, the way that National Geographic, the way that Parts Unknown did, right? Like, is probably what's missing. But I think that food media is probably out there, and so that's probably the saving grace of Instagram for me, is the democratization of those experiences, right? Like, I don't know how many food shows I've seen that delve into like African food, right? There's a new one on Netflix focused on Black food in America. High on the Hog, that has its first episode in Africa exclusively, but there are parts of the world that aren't I feel like dug into very well. So
yeah, there's still room to grow
in that regard. Yeah. I think in serious cultural reflection.
Yeah, I didn't know, and definitely like the personalities of chefs too. Like there's was it Matty Matheson? He's sort of like the counterculture grunge chef, like it's sort of bucking the Julia Child fancy French trend, right? Like there's got to be a chef for each personality subset.
Although his style of cooking is like fairly French.
Driven. So it's still like, not even that different, right? Makes sense.
But he's like a punk, I guess.
Are there like podcasts that center around food where people just like sit down, have a meal, and in between eating they're like talking?
I haven't. I think I haven't come upon that. Probably coming out of Asia, with like emphasis on ASMR.
Yeah, mukbang,
like chewing
right?
sounds, right? Yeah. And but I think the thing that comes to mind is Dave Chang podcast. He has two. One is called Recipe Club, where he has three people come with a recipe around an ingredient or a dish or what have you. Say, cornmeal or something, all coming with one recipe, presenting it. They all cook each other's recipes and then kind of come back and reflect on it. And so that's what comes to mind when you mention that. But around a meal, I can't think of anything like that. I do really like Recipe Club in terms of how it kind of reflects on recipes being inspiration, but not Bible for cooking.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can swap. If there's a sour element in a recipe, you should probably have a sour element in there, but it doesn't need to be lemon juice.
I didn't know like sour or acid was a food component until like 5 years ago. It's amazing. I lived like 25 years before figuring out that you really need something like that in there. It's not just salt.
Yeah, the balance is key.
It was a big thing. Now I like take a half a wedge of lemon and put it in everything, right? Like, it's I think even Matty Matheson, I saw some of his videos and like even was educated through some of the food-based counterculture media, whatever. Let me ask you one, maybe two more food questions, and then we got to do a quick Southern thing. I would love to squeeze these categories. Maybe we'll have to do like a lightning round.
Yeah, we can do a lightning round.
Okay.
Sure.
I know you mentioned having to go to the bathroom. It was
that was my past self. It's already been achieved. Thanks for the pencil sharpening.
Of course. Have you heard that there's like a contention about switching out kitchens with electric ranges and using electric ranges versus gas ranges? Do you have a strong opinion on the difference between using cooking gas and electric stovetops?
Yeah, I don't. That would be something, looking at an apartment, that would be something that would like play in for me.
That's a problem, right? If it's an electric top.
I don't like electric, yeah.
And I know chefs don't either. Like,
I think it's just about control. It's harder to know how hot it is, really.
Yeah.
And it's kind of slower to react. And
yeah.
I think that there are people who use convection, which is like, I don't know if you've seen these. They're kind of like a little platform, and you put the thing on. The platform itself doesn't get hot, but I don't know how it works exactly.
Is it induction?
Or induction.
Convection's the fan in the oven, right?
And it just heats up it has to be a metal pot. It has to be a steel pot, maybe not aluminum. and it heats the like atoms in the thing.
That's awesome, but it's also like kind of scary. Like it feels too weird.
Yeah.
You know? And ultimately, like a lot of the ways we cook food, it's like sort of a takeoff of like a campfire in a way. It feels like that. There's something I feel like very satisfying. See even the visual of like fire dancing underneath your freshly cooked meal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else like you feel like you want to do in food right now? Obviously, you've explored different elements like cooking with people. We didn't unfortunately get to talk about all of this, but you've been capturing food. You've been experimenting with different recipes. Is there anything you'd like to recommend people do at home? Maybe some like something you've learned or something you'd like to share?
I think, well, you hinted at one of the ways that people can kind of like make their food better, which is adding a little sour. A lot of people don't put enough salt in their food, I think.
Salt too. Yeah. Do you use finishing salt?
No. I mean, I just use kosher salt for everything, and that's fine.
Nice.
I think finishing salt is like a little much.
Yeah.
Maybe I would if I were making like fancy brownies or something, but
brownies.
But I don't really bake. So salt, salt, acid. I think like people probably don't taste their food enough when they cook too.
That is a funny thing. You'll sit down at a plate and you'll just go for it without tasting it once, right? That's kind of a comical thing.
Yeah, I think tasting it at the end and seeing what it needs and maybe that's a squeeze of lemon, maybe that's a pinch of salt, maybe it's a little knop of butter, but yeah.
Some mangosteen if it's in season, right? If possible. Okay, quickly, I'm gonna hit you with these categories, then we're gonna do a quick Southern thing, and then we got to get out of here. Desired destination.
I'd like to go to South America.
Nice. TV or movies?
YouTube again. It's where it's at. Anything.
Thank you. Push the brand. Thank you. Typing or writing?
I would like to write more.
Nice. And then I just want a wild speculation from you. Of course, the point of podcasting is to wildly speculate. What percentage of people in the world own and wear a visor?
I'm going to go with 0.7%.
I'm very happy that you chose less than 1%. Excellent. I was on the same wavelength as you. Quickly doing this Southern thing, you grew up in Chicago like myself. You talked about you going to school on the East Coast. Now you've been spending some time more Southeast U.S.
Yeah.
You've been spending time in Chapel Hill. Yeah,
living in Chapel Hill, which is one of the few pockets in North Carolina that is blue. Okay. There's a lot. It's also a small town, relatively speaking. It's a college town, and so farmland creeps in quickly. Probably some similarities to Champaign.
Sure.
In terms of, I can bike 20 minutes and I'm in farmland and I'm seeing signs of supporting Trump and all that.
Yeah. Still? Like Trump 2024?
Still maybe left up or getting ready for
There's a difference.
Whichever one in the family is running. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Don Jr. The person who left it up versus the person who took the time to amend their sign, right? That's a whole spectrum of Q sanity.
Yeah.
So
I mean, one thing I like about living down there is that there's more stake in federal politics in that, previous to where I'm currently living, my vote had never mattered in a presidential election. Living in Illinois, living in Massachusetts, and living in Washington, really big liberal strongholds, especially the places where I was living in each of these. And so living in a state that's, didn't work out this past election for North Carolina. I mean, worked out for the country, in my opinion, but relatively speaking. And
it's always relative, man. It's always relative.
But that's kind of one of the more interesting things. And I was lucky, I suppose, to be there during a presidential election to see what that's like. But
gotta be, yeah, gotta be. Is there anything that you've picked up there that you really like, or you feel like that this maybe Southern culture is doing right? I know you said it's like a blue enclave. But...
Yeah, I think I said it once during this podcast. But y'all, I think, is a really underrated word, phrase, conjunction.
Brought it to conjunction. I'll give you credit for even saying that.
I think it's, it's handy. It like does the trick. It's if some people are upset about, I think Chicago is a you guys place. whereas Pittsburgh or whatever is a use guys or whatever place. And it's, some people might get a little upset by that, and I'd prefer to, make people happier with my language. And so I think I still say you guys all the time, but it's like a fun word to say too.
I am curious. I've heard this about y'all, and I've tried to implement it. I feel wildly uncomfortable. You're almost 2 years in.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've crossed the level of comfort with y'all? Can you drop it in Chicago? Can you drop it?
I felt weird saying it on this podcast.
Did you?
Yeah.
See?
I think saying it down there is one thing, and saying it up here is a different thing. Like, it's like, I don't want people to automatically think I live in Uptown 20 years ago. It was Appalachia Central in Uptown.
Wasn't aware.
Yeah.
My dad was born in Uptown, though, so I can see that. Okay, so y'all. Definitely got to use y'all more. That flies.
Yeah.
That passes muster.
I think biscuits are the other thing.
Biscuits would be the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biscuits are everywhere, and they're always good. Like, there's not a bad biscuit. It's like pizza. Like, I don't know.
We mentioned the gender element and like kind of removing gender from things that don't need to be there. Y'all is great for that.
Yeah,
for
biscuits are not.
Biscuits are unfortunately not, right? But I actually heard the story too about an ER doc that when he was trying to give commands in an emergency situation and trying to keep the patient's health calm and keep them satisfied, he would yell in a Southern accent because it doesn't have the same connotation as yelling in probably, crusty or some sort of highfalutin type accent or medical terminology. Do you feel like that flies? Have you, even around the Southern yelling, is it true that you're not as worked up?
I'm trying to imagine.
Do you ever get a little drunk and start to sound a little Southern down there? Do you ever start to, drop vowels or?
No, I don't think. Oh, maybe. I mean, I haven't had. So 75% of my time down there was during pandemic, and so the amount of time I was getting drunk with others was pretty limited.
Tough questions with that considered, yes.
But. And I would have to say that I haven't been yelled at that many times in a Southern accent. I'm open to it. But I'm just trying to imagine being yelled at in a Southern accent, and I'm imagining it would be something political.
Yeah.
And that feels not good. But I do think that I like the Southern accent. It's like, the Southern accent, North Carolina accent is, I think, really nice and smooth.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for treating all these things like specific monoliths. It's another rule in podcasting is everything has to be a dichotomy unless you want to have a discussion about how it's not a dichotomy.
Right. But I like it. It's a nice thing to hear. I was talking on the phone with someone from Blue Cross Blue Shield, North Carolina, and they called me like honey or dear or something like that, and I was like, oh, that's nice. You don't hear that very often, but
no.
And especially, it's also a college town, so there's a lot of people from other places and a little bit less of that accent, but it's nice to hear. It's comforting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good.
At normal volumes.
Yeah. Which of course matters. Volume is always a consideration.
Can't tell you much about Southern whispering either.
Does it exist or?
I would assume Southern people whisper.
Well, if it calls for it, I don't know why people.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't have that much experience.
In the city, it's dense. You have to whisper. There's fucking people everywhere. There's someone in the next room. But down there, they got the square footage. I assume that was one of the benefits of moving down south. I don't have to control the volume of my voice. I can just keep it above 20 decibels at all times.
That's the value of low density. Yeah.
Doug, thank you very much for coming on. It was
Thanks for
excellent to speak with you.
It was a pleasure.
Very nice. We have shown we have enthusiasm here. We'll have to come back and do it again if you're willing.
Sure.
Get into many, many more categories. But I hope you enjoy your travels back, and then be on the lookout. To work our way. Try to find out some secondary answers to some of these questions, and
Cool.
We'll talk soon.
Will do.
Bye.